I met Noah on a March afternoon just a few weeks after I'd moved to Seattle. It was drizzling and he lent me his umbrella outside the cafe we both happened to step into. It all happened so fast I didn't realize that moment would be the beginning of 4 years that felt like a dream, until they turned into the longest nightmare I've ever lived through. I was 26 then, working as an editorial assistant at a small publishing house. Noah was an architect, recently promoted to lead designer at a rising firm. He was smart, funny, and had a smile that made me forget how gray Seattle could be. We started with spontaneous coffee chats, which turned into evenings cooking together, watching old movies, and talking late into the night about everything, from silly breakups to dreams of a lakeside house filled with books and lavender. We clicked in the strangest ways. We were both hooked on true crime podcasts, preferred cold apple pie over warm, and couldn't stand people who trashed early 2000s pop music. Noah always remembered the little things, that I liked my coffee black Americano, that I wouldn't eat raw onions, and that I spun my ring when I got nervous. One time, after I caught a cold from walking in the rain, he left a bag of medicine and dried chamomile at my door, with a handwritten note. "Without you, this city feels flavorless." I believed I'd found the right person. After almost 2 years together, we moved into a small apartment in Queen Anne. My mom wasn't thrilled at first. She said, "A girl shouldn't live with someone before marriage." I laughed, "Mom, it's the 21st century." At first, living together felt like something out of a romantic film. I'd wake up to fresh coffee and he'd be at the table with his feet propped up sketching some design. I used to think, if happiness had a shape, this was it. 2 people sharing the small things, nothing fancy, just enough to make the days feel light. Then in the fall of our 3rd year, on the anniversary of that rainy afternoon, Noah knelt beside Green Lake, where we had our first date. The sky was clear and the ring wasn't flashy, but the look in his eyes made me tremble. So full of love, so full of promise. I could barely speak as I nodded yes. It felt too perfect, like a chapter out of a scripted love story. I posted a photo of the ring on Instagram with the caption, "Forever starts here," and the congratulations poured in. My mom called, her voice trembling. "Are you sure, Clara?" I smiled, truly smiled. "Mom, I've never been more sure of anything." I started planning the wedding the next week. We chose June, summer, beautiful skies, flowers in full bloom. I bought a notebook to jot down every detail, the invitation color, the menu, the first dance song. Noah wasn't too interested in the planning, but always said, "As long as you're happy." At that moment, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. I had a man who loved me, supported me, and wanted a future with me. After we got engaged, things seemed normal, until they weren't. I didn't see it right away. It started with what sounded like harmless suggestions. "Clara, are you sure that red lipstick suits your skin tone?" Noah asked one evening before a small work party. I looked at myself in the mirror. That lipstick used to be something he called striking and sexy not long ago. But this time, his gaze flicked past me like he was trying not to look at something unpleasant. I gave a weak laugh and switched to a softer nude shade. From then on, the little comments became more frequent. About my hair, "I think the bob makes you look kind of plain." About my clothes, "Maybe you should try dresses with a more mature silhouette. The floral ones look too girlish." About my shoes, "Nakers don't really fit someone who's about to marry an architect." At first I thought maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe he just wanted me to look my best. I told myself, people in love care that much? But then it went beyond how I looked. One night, I was excitedly telling him about a manuscript I'd just finished editing, a debut novel by an up-and-coming author, when he cut in. "I just don't get why you're so into that stuff. Have you ever thought about working for a bigger publisher or doing something more meaningful?" I froze. He'd never belittled my job before. He used to say, "Reading with you is what made me fall harder." I forced a faint smile. "I actually feel good about it. This work makes me feel alive." His gaze lingered for a moment before he said softly, "Yeah. I just think you're capable of more." It sounded like a compliment, but after that I started hearing similar things, over and over, each time with a different undertone. "Your mom's sweet, but kind of old-fashioned, huh? Just look at the way she dresses. Your best friend. Liza right, she's kind of loud. If you want to blend better with my social circle, maybe you should pick your friends more carefully. It's probably time you started going to networking events. Modern women who don't know how to build influence really struggle. I began to doubt myself. Everything I once took pride in, my family, my job, my friends, was now seen as childish, low tier, or out of place. I didn't push back. I chose silence. And then, I started changing. I cut my long hair to a shoulder-length straight style. I started wearing white button-downs and slacks even though I still adored those soft-waisted floral dresses. I signed up for a creative writing class downtown, not because I wanted to, but because Noah had once offhandedly said, "Why don't you try writing something meaningful instead of just fixing other people's work?" He never asked me to change, but somehow I still did, just to feel like I was worthy of standing beside him. I began staying up late to finish online courses on culture, art history, and Italian. The language, he said, sounded elegant. I don't remember when exactly trying to make him proud turned into a never-ending race, one that left me breathless at every step. Whenever I tried to open up, he would smile and say, "Clara, you're being too sensitive. I just want what's best for you." Then one night I came home late after class holding a box of hot food, hoping he'd smile. But instead Noah sat on the couch, his eyes colder than I remembered. "You should have told me you were going to be late," he said flatly. "We're getting married. You can't just live on impulse anymore." I just gripped the food box tighter, unable to speak. There was less than a month left before the wedding. I had chosen my dress, sent out invitations, and booked the reception at a restaurant by Lake Union that I'd loved since I first moved to Seattle. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. But the closer the day came, the more distant Noah became. He skipped most of the family gatherings, constantly postponed planning sessions for the wedding, blaming it on too much work. I felt like someone planning a birthday party for a person who couldn't be bothered to show up. I told myself, maybe he's just stressed. Don't make a fuss. But that "don't make a fuss" mindset had kept me silent for far too long. And then that night came. That day, I had just gotten back from a dress fitting, holding a candid photo of the custom gown I'd been tailoring for 3 months. I was excited to show it to Noah. "I don't want you to see it before the big day, but I think you'll like it. It's light, simple, and the neckline's high, just how you like it." Noah cut me off. "Are you not planning to wear something more extravagant? My mom said she's worried you'll pick something too plain." I froze. The smile was still on my face, but it began to droop. "What do you mean?" Noah sighed, then set his glass on the table like he'd been holding something in too long. "Clara, we need to talk." I nodded, uneasy. "I think maybe we should take a break. It's not that I don't love you, but I'm starting to realize you might not fit into the life I'm building." I couldn't say a word. A chill spread down my spine. "You're a good person," he continued, "but you're too simple, Clara. Your family too. When I think about events, client dinners, big galas, I'm not sure you'd represent the right way. I need someone who can walk with me in both life and career, and you're just not quite there." I let out a laugh. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from the man who once said he'd walk beside me for life. He frowned. "What's so funny?" I shook my head, eyes wet but no tears falling. "Nothing, it's just, you used the word not quite right to describe the person you proposed to less than a year ago." Noah stared at me silently, maybe waiting for me to cry or yell. But I didn't. I simply stepped forward and gently placed the photo of the dress on the table. "Then let's not get married," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Not because I'm not worthy, but because I don't have to prove myself to someone who's forgotten who I am." I turned, walked into the bedroom and pulled out the small suitcase I'd kept in the closet. Everything moved slowly, but my mind was blank. When I returned to the living room, Noah was still standing there, saying nothing. I paused at the door. "You once said I was the gentlest part of your life, so let me help you feel light for real." I closed the door behind me, each step down the stairs feeling like I was walking away from a play I once thought I was the main character in, only to realize I'd been a side role in someone else's script. That night, I didn't go back to my rental apartment. I went straight to Liza's, my best friend. She opened the door, saw my red eyes and small suitcase, didn't say a word, just held me, for a long time. It took me 4 years to love someone, and only 4 minutes to realize that person had never really seen me. I officially canceled the wedding the following Monday morning. Called the restaurant, emailed the event planner, texted apologies to guests who had received invitations. I did it all in silence, step by step, like removing a wedding dress I never got the chance to wear. My mother found out after Liza called her. She didn't say much. She simply showed up at Liza's, held me tightly, and took me back to her house in Tacoma for a few days, where I could sleep without anyone asking, "Have you changed your mind yet?" or "Should you forgive him?" But I knew I didn't need more time to think. That decision didn't come from anger, it was the result of months of quiet pain. Just waiting for one final push to break wide open. A week later I returned to Seattle and rented a small studio in Capitol Hill. It wasn't glamorous or fancy, but it was mine. No more rough wooden chairs Noah had picked to match his minimalist aesthetic. No more abstract paintings I never understood but hung up because he liked them. I picked out every item myself. An olive green velvet armchair, floating bookshelves, and sunflower print bedding. Yes, the one he once said was too tacky. I started rebuilding my life like cleaning out an old room, gathering everything that no longer belonged, packing it up and setting it by the door. Noah texted me 3 days after I left, the first message. "I'm sorry for what I said, I was just stressed. You know that, right?" The second one came a few days later. "We've been through too much to just let it go like this. I know we can fix it." The third, after nearly a week of silence from me. "Clara, don't let a moment of emotion destroy everything. You'll regret walking away from the one person who truly loves you." I left the message unread. Still, there were nights when I'd jolt awake at 2 a.m., heart racing, hand reaching out by habit to the right side of the bed. Then I'd remember. No one was there anymore. There were times I'd walk past the old cafe in Fremont where he first handed me that umbrella, and catch myself standing there longer than I should. Feelings don't vanish overnight. They melt, slowly, like ice dripping into your palm, cold, numbing, but eventually gone. I decided to see a therapist. Dr. Marla, 20 years older than me, had a voice like she was listening to the entire world at once. After a few sessions, she didn't ask, "Why did you endure it for so long?" She just gently said, "Clara, you don't have to be strong all the time, but you do have to be honest with yourself." I started writing again. Not work emails or to-do lists, but journaling. I wrote about the days when I was still in love, about the unnamed wounds, and about the strange freedom I was beginning to feel with each breath. I returned to painting, a college hobby that Noah once dismissed as a waste of time going nowhere. I bought watercolor paints and sketch paper, and spent Sunday afternoons in Seattle's rare sunlight, coloring in scenes that didn't have to be perfect. I also called old friends I'd drifted from just because Noah said they didn't match his vibe. They were surprised to hear from me, but things flowed more naturally than I expected. One evening, as Lisa, Kevin, and I sat on the floor of my new apartment, eating pizza, listening to old songs, and laughing like people who didn't have to walk on eggshells, I realized I had been playing a role that was never meant for me. Noah still texted occasionally, sometimes just one line. "You doing okay? Saw the painting you posted? Still using the watercolor set I gave you?" I didn't need to lash out or block his number. A calm, deliberate silence can sometimes be the clearest ending. Then, on an April morning, I woke up in my sunlit apartment, poured myself a cup of coffee, and instead of curling up on the couch like usual, I opened the window and watched the maple tree unfurling its first leaves of spring. I stood there for a long moment and realized I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. I met Wyatt on an early summer night at my best friend Lisa's birthday party. I had just turned 30, my hair pulled back, wearing a moss green dress that once got called tasteless at someone else's party, his party. Wyatt was an old coworker of Liza's brother, recently relocated from Portland to Seattle. I didn't pay much attention at first. Just a tall guy with a neat beard wearing a simple button-down, mixing drinks for friends like he owned the place. We didn't actually talk until I accidentally spilled wine on my own shoes. He passed me a napkin and offered gently and said, "No worries, at least you didn't spill it on the host's vintage rug." I laughed. Not because the joke was brilliant, but because of his eyes. Unjudging, not clinging to me like some cheap flirt. Just calm, easy, like a summer breeze on a stuffy day. We ended up standing near the balcony for almost an hour talking about things unrelated to marriage, careers, or lofty goals. I told him about the Thursday art class I'd just signed up for, and he told me about the old truck he was fixing up every weekend. No judgment. No one trying to sound impressive. "Clara, you seem like someone who knows how to start over," Wyatt said after I shared a bit about my breakup, without diving into the details. His voice didn't carry pity, just quiet recognition. And that made me feel lighter. The next day, he texted not something like, "I dreamed about you all night," like guys from dating apps used to send, but simply, "I looked up that cafe you mentioned. They've got sea salt chocolate cake. Want to try it this afternoon?" I said yes before I even stopped to wonder if I was ready. And so we kept meeting. Once a week, then twice. Quick coffee runs turned into afternoon park walks. Then into quiet dinners where he made pesto pasta from his mom's recipe. I never felt anxious replying late to his texts. I never felt the need to prove anything. He didn't ask about my ex, didn't compare, didn't pry, as if he understood the past should only be mentioned when the person living it chooses to share. I still remember clearly the night he came over, just after I'd finished an oil painting. 5 straight hours of focus. The paint was still wet. I was wiping my hands when he walked in, paused at the easel, and said softly, "Not everyone dares to live the thing that brings them joy. I admire that." I wasn't used to being seen that way. I gave him a quiet smile. "Thank you," I said, with something warm and certain blooming quietly inside me. 3 months later, he hesitated, then asked, "If you're spending every weekend at my place anyway, do you think officially moving in might save us the trouble of packing each time?" My words didn't come right away. But the next day I brought over 3 books, 2 sets of pajamas, and the fuzzy blanket I loved. Not a full move, but an unspoken yes. We lived together like we weren't trying too hard. He'd leave a sticky note in my lunchbox, "Don't forget to drink water." I'd leave thick socks by the door each morning because he always left earlier than I did. Those little things, no one asked for them, they just became routine. It had been so long since I felt fully alive around someone. Not the kind of love that makes your heart race from anxiety, but the kind that steadies it, makes it feel safe. The first message from Noah came on a Saturday afternoon while Wyatt and I were walking through the Ballard Farmers Market. Short, no greeting, no emoji. "I heard you're seeing someone. I wish you happiness, but if you ever want to talk, I'm still here." I stared at the screen for a while. The sun glinted off Wyatt's hair as he stood waiting while I picked out dried lavender. Caption. I didn't reply. A few days later, a missed call. Then another message. "I shouldn't have said those things, you know that, right? I was just under pressure. I miss you." I placed my phone face down on the table. 10 minutes later, Wyatt walked into the room, noticed the look on my face, and gently asked, "Everything okay?" I hesitated for a second. Then I handed him the message. Wyatt read it, nodded, no follow-up questions, no furrowed brows, no repeating "Are you going to reply?" like someone once did. He just said, "I don't think the past needs to be erased. But I also believe you're strong enough to know what's worth keeping." I put the phone away, didn't say anything, but inside everything stirred. I used to dream about getting an apology, about Noah realizing he'd been wrong. I thought that if it ever happened, I'd feel like I'd finally won, like justice had been restored to my heart. But when it really came, all I felt was emptiness. Noah's third message was the longest. "I passed by the old place, saw the wall where you painted those dandelions. Do you remember? I was wrong. I know that now. You're the only one who ever truly understood me. If you're open to it, I'd like to see you. Just once. To apologize face to face." I stared at the screen for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't weeping anymore. But I also knew I didn't need that meeting to close anything. Forgiveness, if it had happened, had already unfolded quietly in my heart, long ago. Not for Noah, but for the version of me who kept trying, with the wrong person. I replied, "I hope you find peace. But I don't need to hear any more apologies. Let the past rest." That evening, while Wyatt and I lay curled up on the couch, legs tangled, a half-finished documentary playing softly in the background. I said, I told Noah I didn't want to meet. Wyatt turned to me. Good, he said, not because I don't like him, but because you don't need that anymore. I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot quietly undone. No drama, no noise. Just a door gently closing. A few weeks later I heard from Liza that Noah had broken up with his new girlfriend. Someone who, according to her, was exactly his type. But apparently, she was the one who walked away. No one knew why, but I didn't feel anything. No satisfaction, no sadness, no regret. One night, while Wyatt and I were making dinner, he was baking a pie from his mom's recipe, I paused midway and looked over at him, hunched over the sink rinsing vegetables. What do you really think of me? I asked. Wyatt looked up, wiped his hands with a towel, walked over and placed a hand gently on my cheek. I think you're the strongest woman I've ever met, not because you haven't been hurt, but because you've healed yourself and still remain kind to the world. I love that. And I love you. It took me a second to find the right response. I just leaned into his chest and listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. And in that moment, I understood something. Love means not having to prove you deserve it. It means never being forced to become someone else just to be allowed to stay. Our housewarming party took place on a lightly sunny Saturday afternoon in the first home Wyatt and I picked together, painted together, and even had a small argument over the mustard yellow armchair he said was too loud. We didn't invite many people, about 20 guests, just close friends and family. Monica brought her signature lemon cheesecake, which she proudly called her social weapon. Wyatt set up everything in the backyard himself. Recycled wood tables and benches, string lights and lavender pots lined perfectly along the fence. Around 4 p.m. I was in the kitchen preparing a tray of juice when Monica walked in, still holding a soda can, her expression unusual. Clara, she said quietly. Noah's outside. He showed up, he brought a bottle of wine. I froze, one hand still gripping a half-filled glass. Was he invited? Monica shook her head. I don't know who invited him, but judging by how he looks, I'm guessing he came unannounced. And I think he's already had a drink. I exhaled slowly, then nodded. Let him in, but don't let anyone pour him more wine. When I stepped into the yard, Noah was standing near the buffet table, white button-down, wrinkled, face flushed, fumbling with the cork of his wine bottle. Everyone politely looked away. Wyatt, who had been chatting with his cousin, glanced at me. Waiting for a cue? I walked up. Noah, I said calmly, hello. He looked up, eyes unfocused for a moment, then forced a crooked smile. Clara, you look, well. No words, just a small gesture toward Monica. I simply gestured toward Monica. Monica will get you a glass of water. No need to be formal, he smirked. Just an old friend here to say congrats. Together we took the seats near the edge of the patio, away from the crowd. Wyatt quietly walked over, placed a hand on my shoulder, and sat beside me. He didn't interrupt, he just stayed there, solid and steady. Noah poured himself a glass of wine, took a sip, then looked around as if making sure people were listening. I have to say, he began, his voice not loud but clear, I'm genuinely happy for you, for how well you've done, but part of me feels like I had a role in that. I frowned. A role? Yeah, he nodded. If I hadn't pointed out the things you needed to change, would you really have become this confident? Wyatt turned his head toward me. He wasn't angry. He just tilted his head slightly as if asking, do you want me to step in? Then Wyatt set down his glass, looked straight at Noah, and in his usual steady voice said, I think what made Clara strong wasn't you, it was her learning to stand up on her own. No one gets credit for that but her. Noah let out a half-drunken, half-awkward laugh. I never said I meant to hurt her. I just played a part in the journey. And that journey, I said, is over now, Noah. Is that what you came here to say? He went quiet, then sighed and muttered, You've changed. You're not like you used to be. That's right. Because back then I thought I needed someone's approval to have worth. Now I know. I'm enough on my own. The space fell silent for a few seconds. Then Monica showed up, perfectly timed, like she had a built-in radar for awkward situations. Oh, by the way, she said brightly, I ran into Daisy at the candle shop the other day. She looked amazing. 6 months pregnant, her new boyfriend's a photographer, seems really kind and gentle. I met Noah's eyes, his face tensed for a brief moment, lips pressed together. No one said anything else. Eventually, he stood, gave a slight nod. Congrats to you both, really. Wyatt walked him out to the gate. I stayed back with Monica, arms folded. When Wyatt returned, he didn't say anything. Just handed me my phone. He called 3 times on the way out. I hung up. I gave a quiet laugh. Thank you. The party went on. No one mentioned Noah again, but I knew the story had finally closed. Wyatt and I got married on a September morning in the small garden behind our house, where he once planted lavender and forgot to water it for an entire week. The air was cool, the sun was soft, just right for suits not to feel too hot, and for me to not need an umbrella for my simple white lace dress. The dress I chose without anyone's opinion, approval, or permission, just mine. There were fewer than 30 guests, all people who had witnessed my journey, the pain and the healing. My mother cried through the entire ceremony, and Monica joked, "If Wyatt forgets the rings today, you're marrying him anyway. We're not letting you postpone." Wyatt didn't forget the rings. And when his eyes met mine, glowing in the sunlight, I knew I had chosen the right person at the right time. Married life wasn't a fairy tale. We still argued about little things. He'd leave the sink strainer open. I'd forget to close the cereal box and it'd go stale. Some nights I'd come home late, exhausted and snappy, and he wouldn't understand how one email from my boss could ruin an entire dinner. But the difference was, through the mess, I never felt alone. We talked, we listened, and neither of us had to shrink ourselves to fit the other's expectations. One early winter evening, wrapped in blankets and reading on the sofa, Wyatt placed his hand gently on my stomach, no reason, no agenda, and asked, "What do you think? When will we be ready to add one more person to this home?" A quiet smile formed as I closed the book and met his gaze with a nod. No pressure, no promises. We both knew, whatever comes, as long as it's built on trust, not fear of losing each other, it will be right. Our little home wasn't anything special. The roof was a bit old, the kitchen creaked when we opened the cabinet doors. But it was the place where I could cook while listening to the Beatles, instead of hearing someone call the music outdated. It was the place where I could hang my own paintings on the walls without asking, "Does this look okay?" It was the place where I could hold someone at the end of the day, not to keep them from leaving, but to know I was right where I belonged. Now and then, I still hear about Noah, a message from a mutual friend, a photo someone tags by accident. I haven't blocked him out of my world, but I haven't opened the door either. He's like a chapter I once read carefully, felt deeply, cried over, but have since closed and shelved in its rightful place. On my 31st birthday, Wyatt gave me a fresh stack of blank paper and a new watercolor set. He said, "You're the one who painted this life, now it's time to paint what's next." I sat down, opened the first page. No pressure to make it beautiful, no need for perfection. Just painting, for myself. Value once, I thought, it was something others granted, a look of approval, a compliment, being chosen. But now I understand, value is something you discover on your own, when you're loved with gentleness and without conditions. I no longer need anyone to prove I'm good enough. Because every morning, when I wake up in our sunlit home, hearing Wyatt brewing coffee in the kitchen and an old song playing from the little speaker, I know I've gone far enough, long enough, to finally come home to myself. My story isn't just about walking away from the wrong relationship. It's about slowly, painfully, but steadily finding my way back to who I truly am. I used to think happiness came from pleasing others, until I realized peace comes from being yourself and still being loved. In a world full of outside voices, the greatest lesson I've learned is this: your worth isn't in someone else's eyes. It's in how you treat yourself after every time you rise again. What do you think about Claire's journey and how she reclaimed her self-worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt and powerful stories about life, love, and family.